testing and the inaccurate reliance on it, and our own exposure experience. First, healthcare and how easily they bought into government-run healthcare. It all began with flattening the curve. The goal was to spread out the pace of infections so as not to overwhelm the healthcare system regarding personal protective equipment, ICU beds, ventilators, staffing, and floor space. We did that. It took a little time, but we did that. It was not to decrease the infection rate. It never was. The number who would become infected was not known. Prediction models were catastrophic, and in the end, very wrong. Thankfully, numbers are lower than expected so far, and the models used have been discredited. The number of infected persons in different parts of the state has been very different too. Many people who get COVID-19, about 80%, have mild infections. We are finding that some have had the illness and never knew it. Fortunately, more than 97% of people have recovered. Yet all areas of the state were treated the same. Many businesses, their employees, and families have suffered as a result. Yet healthcare let government run the show and dictate what care could be given. This was our first taste of Medicare for all. This has been awful. Government-controlled access to care, forced medical personnel to limit care, made people too scared to access care, and forced medical personnel to beg to get needed care for their patients. They forced recovering COVID-positive patients back into nursing homes and thus spread the infection to other vulnerable patients. They prevented family members from being with patients as they died or gave birth. EMS data from Milwaukee showed an 80% increase in suicide attempts, a 54% increase in drug overdoses, and a 70% increase in mental health concerns. If this is what medical care might look like in the future, we should fight against this.
Yes. Yes.
The end results of blindly buying into this has led to an industry that now will have fiscal deficits, is furloughing staff, has cut salaries and hourly pay, and has abandoned their patients that they say they care about. Some systems are beginning to bring patients in for time-sensitive surgeries, treatments, and procedures. It's a start. They are prepared with space, treatment, testing, and personal protective equipment to handle any surge of the coronavirus, but can also provide the world-renowned care people need and expect. Next, testing for COVID-19 and the blind reliance on it. There's been a lot of focus on the need for testing for this virus before we can do anything. Oh my gosh, it's a novel disease and thus a new illness. It took time to develop testing for it, as it took time to develop treatments. Initial test kits from the CDC were contaminated. Eventually, we amplified testing production and now are testing more people than anywhere in the world. Yet, there are people who still complain we aren't testing enough. What does testing tell you? It's only a snapshot at one point in time.
Yes.
Exactly, exactly.
You can use one form of testing to determine if you have the disease currently. The results are only helpful at that moment you took the test. A negative result will not necessarily mean you will remain negative forever. You can still get the coronavirus in the future. Should we test you every day into perpetuity? I think not.
I think not.
You can also be tested to see if you have had the coronavirus in the past. You could test positive for the antibodies, but there is no evidence of continued immunity. Testing everyone once or every day will not reassure us that we are done dealing with this virus. To wait for testing results to open up Wisconsin is nonsensical, especially in areas that had so few cases. People do misunderstand what testing can and should do. In the end, test results don't matter for most people. What matters is the test result when you are ill, and especially if you are hospitalized. Finally, exposure experiments. We have done some inadvertent exposure experiments to see if the number of diagnosed cases would go up. I would like to thank you all for participating.
I just got that one. Okay.
We shopped at
I'm a
busy
little
grocery
slow.
stores, especially before
It's okay,
Easter.
Kevin. We love
Target,
you
Menards, and Fleet
anyways.
Farm are open. An in-person election was held. Many protests
That I
against
was a
the
poll
draconian
worker at.
lockdown were held. None have resulted in a surge of COVID cases in the state. The state of Georgia has shown us we can forge ahead with a careful reopening and see a decline in cases.
Yep.
Examples such as these have made people question the state restrictions. Every business that has been deemed non-essential can now open with proper preventative measures, especially in regions with few COVID cases. We need to stop picking winners and losers, essential and non-essential.
I love people who can whistle. I can't.
We do not really know how this
Jealous.
virus will
I
behave
am
in the
too.
future. Staying at home forever, though, is not an option.
Exactly.
And finally, as we open up, I hope we can all be graciously patient and continue to follow the current CDC guidelines. And you all know these. Frequent hand washing for 20 seconds or use hand sanitizer. Continue social distancing. Don't touch your face, mouth, or eyes. Stay home from work or school if you are sick. Cough or sneeze into your elbow.